All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another meeting of the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce's Infrastructure and Land Use Committee. I'm Brian Levine. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs for the Chamber. And as we do for all of our committee meetings, as you just heard, please note that we are recording this meeting. This committee meets several times a year on the second Tuesday of the month. Today's not Tuesday because we moved this particular meeting one day ahead, but Tuesdays is typically when the Infrastructure and Land Use Committee meets. We have a couple other policy committees as well, and I just want to tell you about a couple meetings that we have tomorrow morning at the same time as today. Tomorrow morning, we're lucky enough to have Congressman-elect Glenn Ivey joining our Legislative Affairs Committee. He's the newest member of the unofficial Montgomery County congressional delegation following the redistricting process and the election. So he newly elected Congressman-elect Glenn Ivey will be joining us. So I'm excited about that, and I hope you can join us for that. For our Infrastructure and Land Use Committee, we have one last meeting in 2022, and that's going to be with the newly appointed Planning Board Chair, Jeff Science, on December 13th at 8:30. So that's already, you can register online. You may have a committee, you may have a calendar invite for that as well. So we hope you can pencil that into your calendar. That's Planning Board Chair Jeff Science on December 13th. In lieu of introductions, or I don't know how we want to handle introductions, I'll let the co-chairs decide on what we do. I would ask that you, this is what we're doing now, please put your name and organization in your Zoom box. So if you're on a computer, to change it, click on those three dots in the upper right-hand corner of your picture, and then click on the bottom menu, which says rename, and do it like Bob and I have on your screens if you can. And as always, for our Zoom meetings, we urge that you put your questions in the chat box or raise your virtual hand, or I think you can raise your real hand as well when we get to the Q&A portion of today's meeting. And with that, without further ado, let's get our meeting started. I want to introduce our committee's leadership, our chair, Gus Bauman, and our co-chair, Bob Elliott. Gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you, Brian. This is Gus Bauman at Beveridge and Diamond, and we're pleased to have everyone here today. And as always, I do like everyone involved in these meetings to introduce themselves so that everyone, including especially our speaker, can know who's here. So after I speak for a moment, and Bob, we're going to turn this over for everyone to introduce themselves before we dive in to Doran's presentation. Doran Bosso is the CEO of Purple Line Transit Partners. That is the group building the Purple Line, and then we'll be supervising the operation and maintenance of the line going forward, working with the state government. So they're not just involved in construction, but what comes after the project and the line opens into the coming years. It'll be interesting to hear from Doran about how that will work precisely in terms of working with the state and the community, as well as his own company. Doran comes to us with this project before. He had worked on the Interstate 4 project in the Orlando, Florida area, and he also was deeply involved in the Elizabeth River Tunnels project that was built in the Norfolk, Virginia area. So he has a lot of experience with large, complicated transportation projects. Of course, the Purple Line is different and in many ways unique, which is what makes them such a challenging and exciting project. Let me turn this over to Bob, and then afterwards, if everyone could introduce themselves. And we always do these meetings where we end no later than 10 o'clock. We may end before 10 o'clock. We just don't go past 10 o'clock. And always feel free for comments and questions. Because that's a big part of this meeting is comments and questions, pivoting off our speakers' comments. Bob?
Thanks, Gus. Bob Elliott with Lantian. I am Gus's co-chair for this committee, and Doran, thank you for coming today. Brian alluded to this at the bottom of your screen. I think as you all may know at this point, there are two items there. One is you can chat, throw things in chat, and I see everybody's introducing themselves in the chat, which is great. There's also a button called reactions, and under reactions, you can raise your virtual hand or what have you. So there are options. Doran, it's up to you with people type questions in the chat as to whether or not you answer them as we go, or if you just like to kind of gather them at the end, and of course we'll help direct things at the end of your talk. Brian, I'm going to turn it over to you because I think it'd probably be easier since you probably have more control over people and volume and what have you, in case we don't recognize everybody, since some things may be cell phone or other things. So Brian, if you would basically take the lead and ask people to introduce themselves and come off real quick, and then we'll give it over to Doran, if that'd be all right.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Bob. I'm just going to go in order on my screen and call you out. And if you could introduce yourself, that would be great. Ashley Bagwell, that puts you first. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you, Brian, and good morning, everybody. I'm Ashley Bagwell with Harris Jones and Malone.
Patrick?
Good morning, Patrick O'Neill at Lurch, Early and Brewer, land use attorney, and several clients who are impacted by Purple Line, so really interested in this talk.
Charlie?
Hey, good morning. Charlie Scott at Metro. And of course, we have 4 stations that intersect with Purple Line. Good morning.
Hey, Charlie. John?
Good morning, everyone. John Underland, Communications Manager for Purple Line Transit Partners.
And one of our esteemed board members, Andy?
Good morning, Andy Bridge with Eagle Bank. I'm also the treasurer of the chamber.
Christina?
Paris with Montgomery County Department of Transportation, Strategic Projects Implementation Manager, working heavily on the Purple Line.
Thank you for joining us this morning. Another board member, Mr. Martinko.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you. Jim Martinko, I'm the office managing partner of Cohn Resnick. We're a national accounting firm. I'm responsible for our Bethesda location and very excited to bring our employees to work on the Purple Line.
And on our staff, Lisa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Wilson, Director of Advanced Membership and Sales.
And another board member, William Ellis, do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, everyone. Will Ellis, Director of Governmental and External Affairs for PEPCO. Happy to be here and hear from you all today.
And Mr. Mayor, you're next.
Barney Rush, I'm the mayor of the town of Chevy Chase. Very pleased to join today and very happy that this project is now underway again and looking forward to it being completed.
And a new face to me, but from the great Senator Van Hollen's office. Austin, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning. Austin Morris, Director of Constituent Services for Senator Van Hollen. Thanks so much for including us this morning.
And I see someone in a conference room. I can't see their face.
Hello, I'm Rob Castile. I'm with Peel Properties. We have locations that are affected by the Purple Line. Actually, haven't come through our parking lot, so we're very interested in the project as well.
And Jake.
Good morning, Jake Adler with Montgomery County Government, Community Projects Manager. So whatever you need, if you need help with anything, just feel free to reach out and we'll get you the right person.
We're almost to the end here. How about Mel and then Feezy?
Mel Toll with Lee Development Group in downtown Silver Spring, not far from the Purple Line stations.
Easy Halim, I'm the Business Solutions Manager at Montgomery College Workforce Development and Continuing Education.
And let's finish with Chuck, Brian, and Beth.
Good morning, everyone. Chuck Connor, attorney at Venable in the state and local government practice. Happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Brian Nanlu, Vice President of Government Affairs for Maryland for the Apartment and Office Building Association. We have members abutting the Purple Line.
Good morning, Beth Davis with BD Contractor Services. We are a pre-construction consulting firm assisting in permitting, and we have a number of clients who are affected by the Purple Line.
Okay, Gus and Bob, that is, I believe that's everyone. If you wanna do the transition or hand it over?
Oh, Doran, it's, as Gus mentioned, we have about an hour and 15 odd minutes. The floor is yours for any sorts of presentations or talks, and then we'll direct questions. Obviously, it sounds like there's a bunch of constituents from a variety of different sources, whether they're landowners or people that serve landowners. So nice mix of people, and of course our board as well. So we're mostly friendly to the ongoing efforts and challenges you face in terms of trying to move this project forward. We're all looking forward to it. So.
Well, thanks so much, and thanks for everyone being here. As Gus mentioned, my passion is developing big transportation projects. This one is so unique and complex and exciting. But one thing that stands out to me, as I've been a few places kind of around the country, is just the amount of community support and involvement for this project. So appreciate everyone being here, and definitely happy to take time answering questions. If I don't, get to it in the chat while I'm going, in the presentation, if I don't happen to see it, happy to stop anytime, or handle questions afterwards. I do have a short presentation, certainly won't take the time we have. And so happy to speak to all of you about anything else in particular. So I'll share my screen and start with a bit of an overview here. So you all are seeing the presentation, just confirming?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So the project alignment that most of you all are familiar with here, the purple line is 16.2 miles. It has 21 stations along those 16 miles. We tend to go from Bethesda to New Carrollton. That's how I'll kind of talk through the project today. You see the major connections, and most of you are aware or located very near them. So we'll get into some of those details today, and the impacts and the upcoming construction work in some key areas. Really what this project is about is connections and enhancing a lot of the existing transit hubs and available modes of transportation in the region. As was mentioned earlier, we're connecting to 4 metro stations. We have adjacent stations with 4 existing metro stations all along the alignment, 3 MARC commuter rail lines, Amtrak, and of course, just a host of bus services, local bus services. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention trails for cyclists, pedestrians. The Capitol Crescent Trail is of particular importance to this project. We're excited to be improving that trail. We understand how much it means to the local community there, and we're working as hard as we can to build that trail and other trails in the area, including the Green Trail along Wayne Avenue and UMD campus, and some other odds and ends. Bike improvements have always been envisioned as part of the project. Some overall kind of key benefits of a major infrastructure project, and this one in particular, of course, it spurs economic growth. Not that Montgomery County needs much help in that area, but certainly just better enhances connectivity to a huge regional employment centers, and increasing access to jobs. And that's really what these big projects are about. In the design and construction phase, if you follow a formula that the U.S. Department of Transportation puts out, it would say that this project, the scope and scale and magnitude, would create 30,000 direct, indirect, and kind of induced jobs. And that's not just the 1,000 people who will be working on the project at the peak in terms of construction workers next year, but also the suppliers, the subcontractors, the transportation of materials and equipment and supplies. They're eating at, people that are working are eating at restaurants and staying at hotels, and all the business impacts that many people on this call probably know better than I do. And as Gus alluded to, we're not just focused on the design and construction, but also the operations and maintenance. And that's a new long-term sort of job opportunities to continue to operate and maintain the light rail system. Transit like this of course, attracts development. And again, that's not exactly my area of expertise. There's probably others on the call who can speak to it much better than I do. But of course, it's driving a lot of development in the corridor. We have disadvantaged business enterprise goals. So small minority-owned businesses, disadvantaged business enterprises. We have targets on how much of our contract value we spend. And to date, we've spent over $200 million with these disadvantaged business enterprises. We're under contract for another 100 million, with probably hundreds of millions more to go. So that in itself is just a massive project, really supporting these local and minority and disadvantaged businesses. So we're very excited about that effort, as well as the environment. We're all looking for different ways to get around more efficiently, reduce auto dependence. So the environmental impact statement mentioned 1 million gallons of gas saved within 20 years. And we do have a LEED certified operations and maintenance facility, which is very far along in construction, and we'll see that a little bit later. So really excited about the environmental benefits of this project. Some of this I covered, but just key features, all the work that's going on. 32 miles of track, that's 16 in each direction. There will be 2 tracks, 1 to go each direction. Right now, it looks very much like a utility relocation project. So when we're talking drainage, utilities, that's really one of the first steps in any big transportation infrastructure project, but particularly this one, where we have to move utilities so that we can widen the road or the alignment, and then make way for the rail to go. So 10 miles of bike lanes and trails, 26 bridges, and over 250 walls. So quite a lot to be working on. Gus alluded to this, and this is where I've spent my career in public-private partnerships. So this is where in this case, the state, the Maryland Department of Transportation, Maryland Transit Authority, enters into a long-term agreement to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain this, in this case, transportation infrastructure, this light rail project. So we, Purple Line Transit Partners, are the concessionaire. We're right there in the middle. We have the contract with the state, which specifies all of the performance requirements of the system, and it'll be always under state oversight and monitoring. But we have to build the light rail and the cars and operate it for 30 years to pretty high performance standards. We couldn't do that alone. 2 of our biggest and most important partners are Maryland Transit Solutions. So that's the new design build contractor who has been ramping up this summer. We'll talk more about their works, but that's a joint venture of Dragados and OHLA, 2 very experienced international construction firms who do a lot of this kind of transit work. And then we have Purple Line Transit Operators. They're going to be our partners to operate and maintain the system over the 30 years after it's built. They're very involved right now, and that's a huge benefit of the public-private partnership model. Is there's a lot of interaction the entire time between the people who are going to operate it, are very involved in the design and the construction to make sure it's going to be an efficient, robust, easy to maintain system. And so we're not just kind of nameless, faceless organizations. We do like to be out in the community that we serve. So these are my partners from the state of Maryland. Many of you may know Matt Pollock. He's been around for the past several years on the project. He is a local Maryland guy and a transit expert. Also recently brought on Ray Biggs, just a great addition to the team. So these 2 are also out in public speaking with elected officials, community groups, community advisory teams. So be on the lookout for them. Same thing with the concessionaire, myself and Dan Norman. You saw John Underland also on the call. So Dan is our chief technical officer, helping to smooth out any construction issues. Also a veteran of public-private partnership projects such as this. Our construction partners, Ugo and Julio. Julio is the construction manager. He is the go-to guy. He knows every inch of this project up and down, and he's responsible for the overall construction. And so again, these folks are also out talking to the community, working on the site. You may see them around. And so now what the project is, who's building it. So what's our schedule? The Purple Line has been around for many years. We had some challenges and sort of paused construction for a little bit with the state of Maryland doing some construction work in the interim. But now that we're fully back up and running with a new design build partner, here's where we're at. We're in the fall of 2022 right now. So in the summer, the MTS team really began to ramp up their activities and their team. A key milestone coming up next year will be getting the light rail vehicles here in Maryland. We'll talk a little bit more about the light rail vehicles shortly. Then in 2024, we complete a section that we call the test track. It's about 2 miles long. It's not a separate track. It's part of the actual 16 miles, but it's a space that we have to have ready early to begin testing those vehicles on our track, making sure everything works as it should, some of the initial systems tests before 2025, where we envision having the full track alignment ready, powered up, the systems going. And these systems do require quite a bit of testing, and we'd have almost a year of system-wide testing where we're interacting with traffic systems in Montgomery County, Prince George's County, and our own just dispatching and train controls, training drivers. So there's quite a bit of testing to go on in the last year of construction. That's what we'll be focused on before opening to passengers. The vehicles themselves, people think they're the real star of the show here. It definitely is. It's a good-looking vehicle. My daughters, who are 5 and 8, love it because it's purple. A purple train. It's very exciting. So hopefully the community feels the same way. We do have the initial 26 vehicles are assembled. Most of them are factory tested, all but the last maybe 2 or 3 have been tested up at the factory in Elmira, New York, in upstate New York. So this is a real photo of the train from New York on some of the short test track they have there. And these vehicles are ready to go, and they're just awaiting the track here in Maryland, so we have some place to put them in. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But 80 seats, 400 person capacity, 140 feet long. They should be very low floor, easily accessible for bring your wheelchair, bicycle. And as I mentioned, we're really targeting that fall 2023 to start seeing them here on the site. So now these next couple of slides, I'll walk on the alignment. We'll go from sort of Bethesda to the east and cover definitely not everywhere, but some of the key active construction areas, so you can get a flavor for what's happening along the alignment. And then if we need to visit any of them in detail afterwards, if anyone has any specific questions, of course, I'll do my best. So this is Bethesda, where there is a connection to the existing metro. The metro is quite deep, over 100 feet below ground in this location. So the previous contractor had finished sort of the elevator shaft, which would take you from street level and the Purple Line station down to access the Red Line station. That's now been sort of opened back up and being made safe to begin construction again. And what we're going to do in that location is build a gantry crane, and there's a drawing there, sort of a rendering, and it'll be enclosed in a building, a temporary building, and that's really for safety of the public. It really separates some pretty significant and dangerous construction work from all the pedestrians, businesses, and people transiting that local area. It should reduce noise, dust, vibration. So that's a new solution that's been brought to the table by our new design build contractor. And they're starting to build the foundations there, kind of in that light blue color, starting to build those foundations now. So that building, that gantry crane, will be going up now in conjunction with a lane closure and pedestrian detour on Wisconsin Avenue. If we continue walking towards kind of Connecticut Avenue Bridge. Connecticut Avenue Bridge, we're looking to pour concrete next week. It's on the schedule, weather permitting. It gets a little dicey as the weather gets colder, but we should be good to pour concrete over the Connecticut Avenue Bridge. You can see here that the the light rail vehicle has its own alignment. We're not near roads, and the Capitol Crescent Trail will be immediately adjacent. So the Capitol Crescent Trail Bridge over Connecticut will sort of be next, but we're working in this area. With the winter season approaching, or here, Columbia Country Club has slowed down, and we'll be doing some works. As you can see, we're very close adjacent to that as well. We'll be getting in there now. I think as of yesterday, we can begin some construction work at the country club and get out of their way before spring, before the golfers are back. In the Rock Creek area, this was our first bridge deck pour since construction resumed. We poured that in October, so this photo was maybe from September. Now that bridge has concrete on it, and we've got nearby walls under construction, and similar adjacent to that will be a special Capitol Crescent Trail bridge right next to the existing, well, it's not existing, but that light rail bridge that you see there. We'll keep moving towards Silver Spring. This Wayne Avenue and Silver Spring area is just a huge point of focus. A lot of utility relocations have been ongoing. The MTA, the state of Maryland, has been working on utility relocations for the last several years in this area. We've run into some rock, so it's slower going than we hoped. So we're actually working to redesign and raise the storm sewer, so we're not having to blast through rock just to put in storm sewer. So this area is, of course, there's schools, there's pedestrians, a lot of very nearby residents who are impacted. There's a constant dialogue with this community in particular, and all communities, but especially Wayne Avenue, just to make sure, like many areas here, pedestrian access, school children, buses. So we are doing storm drain work there and sewer line relocation. And that's going to be ongoing for some time as we work to widen the road to eventually, put the light rail system there in addition to the vehicular traffic. Silver Spring Transit Center, the team has sort of done all the due diligence required to get started in this really complex and congested area. The photo you see is concrete bridge girders, which eventually the new Purple Line station will sit on top of that bridge. So the vehicles will pass right through on that bridge to a station. From there, you'll be able to make it across the parking lot, and towards the very top right of the photo, you can see that's where there's a CSX line, MARC line, and DC Metro station. So a very complex, congested area, a lot of coordination with stakeholders, but we're just about to start working on this bridge. We've got some of the safety stuff required before you start putting people working on those concrete girders that you see, but that work should be starting in the next couple weeks as well. So we're very excited to get that moving in Silver Spring. As we go towards Manchester Place, we have a tunnel on the project, and the tunnel was one of the highlights of the early construction work that was done with the previous design builder. That tunnel is fully built underground. It needs to be outfitted with track and the systems. So we're coordinating very closely, as you can see how we impact the community. I mean, we're very close there, and we are beginning work, particularly with track inside the tunnel in early 2023. It's very cold and windy in that tunnel in the winter, so we're going to wait for the winter months and pick it up in the spring, but there is some work ongoing in that area now. Piney Branch Road and University Boulevard, this is really more of the same story, where it's storm drains and utility relocations currently. And with that done, then we can begin to start shifting traffic on the road to, again, widen the roads to make room for the light rail tracks to be, especially on University, right down the middle. So that work is ongoing, and traffic will continually being moved side to side as we're able to access one side of the road work on it, widen it, switch traffic to the new side we just built, move to the other side, widen it. And then the last phase will be going right down the middle, building the track for the trains. So that quickly took us through Montgomery County, but of course I couldn't fully leave out the other side of the rail. So just some highlights. We do the train does go right through the University of Maryland. So all the orange you see in the pictures, that's because of our construction. We relocated the M with the University of Maryland. So that's the new M there in the photo, and where there's kind of a red square, that's where the old M was. That work, we're coordinating very closely with the University of Maryland. Of course, we're conscious of when students are on and off campus, and working to maximize the time we can get in there. You see another station, bridges there that sort of in flux. We're going to be working there at Kenilworth and Riverdale. And then the building you see, that's our operations and maintenance facility. So this picture was taken in May. There significant progress since then. There will be all sorts of track, as you would expect. It's sort of a major train depot. You'll be able to pull the trains in here, do any kind of maintenance needed. There's a paint booth. There's a wash station, which is just like going through a car wash, but it's massive size for trains. This will be where all the dispatchers and communication happens. And again, that is a LEED certified facility, so very environmentally friendly, and a huge focus of construction, because this is where we'll be delivering the trains, hopefully at this time next year. And to do that, you need the infrastructure. We need to lay a lot of track, a lot of overhead catenary system. That's what powers the trains through an overhead power lines. So we're working on building those poles and foundations, starting to route all the power, all the track in this area. As I said, it's really critical to our schedule to keep that advancing so that we can get those trains here. And really, I think this project's going to feel even more real than it already is. I know people have been impacted for years and will continue to be, but I think seeing a bunch of purple trains around will be a real exciting time for the project at this time next year. I'm going to finish the presentation anyway with just how you can contact us. This is on the website, but the website is purplelinemd.com. There's a fully dedicated outreach team, so we're always answering the phones day or night, whether it's just a question or kind of an emergency. That those phone numbers are staffed, and that's how to find us online. And that's a joint cooperation with us. My colleague John Underland, who's here, and the state of Maryland as well. MDOT/MTA is very involved to make sure we're taking care of our stakeholders and being responsive. So that's all I had prepared. I will stop sharing and happy to chat through any other questions or anything that anyone wants to chat about.
Thank you. That's great.
You had also mentioned there's information on the website here. It's one of the questions that was asked in the sidebar was, is this slide deck up there, and is that available to the group, or can you make that available to us?
Yeah, sure. I think the plan is to make it available. We do, as there are a couple partners, and I like all projects, it goes to the last minute. So I was doing some last minute tinkering this morning, and I just have to run it by all of our partners again. But yes, we do intend to make this available for distribution, so we can coordinate that afterwards.
So we'll have Brian sort of check back in with you, and Brian, obviously, if you'll distribute it back out to the attendees and or make it available to our membership, that would be great. Are there any other, I didn't see any other questions come up. So if you do have a question for Doran, please, raise your virtual hand or raise your hand and we'll take a look at it. I guess one question that came to mind from you, where's your test track? I guess, and the question on the test track is, are people going to have the opportunity to get on, try it, see it, or is it exclusively going to be for your own sort of usage during that period? And you've got almost 2 years of work going on there to get people excited about getting on this as opposed to just watching it in our communities. So I guess, is there going to be opportunities for that?
Great question. So I'll start with the location of the test track, and then I can answer the harder parts. The test track is on Veterans Highway. So it is sort of the far east side of the alignment, almost at the new Carrollton station and by the O&M facility, which is on Veterans Highway there in Prince George's County. So it's sort of 2 miles, almost on the full kind of far east side. I'd never had that question before about people riding it sort of during testing. Clearly testing is our time to make sure it's safe and work out the bugs. So I'm certain there's very much federal and state safety requirements that would have to be met there. So I'm not exactly sure. I don't think until the system is fully certified, we could sort of be offering rides, but that's something that as we get closer to it, it's a really good idea. And, you know, as I said, people should be excited to ride and should see what's coming. So it's certainly something to look into. I haven't had the question, so that's a first.
And well, here's another thought for you. Have you looked into whether or not you could, 2 years seems like an awfully long time. Is there any way to put components of this system in place a little earlier? Not just give an easy one for a lot of people over here and sort of probably closer to the western side of Montgomery County, Bethesda to Chevy Chase. And I know that those are maybe some complicated things around the gantry and a bunch of other things, but it just strikes me that that limited zone, which also runs back and forth through the west side rail barn, again, 2 years seems like an awfully, I mean, most of us are driving underneath the bridge in Chevy Chase now or seeing a lot of this stuff. Members are, you know, we're all kind of aware of it. And through no fault of yours, obviously, we had an issue with the previous concessionaire and group and what have you on the construction side. But, you know, that's 4 years, for your world, that's 4 years. That's assuming, by the way, you stay on schedule. And of course, we all want you to stay on schedule, but the truth is we look at these schedules and you look at the Silver Line, right? How late is the Silver Line delivering? Again, not through issues of their own. You're totally different. You're controlled by the state in a very different way. One state is supposed to, but I'd offer that up as are there ways to kind of, again, get things moving a little faster so that, again, pieces of this, or whether it's on the, you know, College Park to this, where there's little pieces that could be worked into the schedule earlier.
Yeah, I think we've looked at that, and in the previous kind of iteration, we did look at a phased opening. It tends to involve a lot of then redundancy in testing, so it sort of puts the overall schedule back in a way, because there's so much you have to do that you're sort of doing things 2 and 3 and 4 times. So the vision is very much to open it all at once, unless we have to adapt and adjust because of some major unexpected impact. So I think it's a good comment, but I think there's then you're delivering late. You're very much likely delivering later for some other section, and I think that the state in particular has kind of the final say in this, and they decided very much as we re-envisioned this and re-procured it that all at once was the way to go.
Anybody questions or comments? Or I'll just keep going. Gus, you got anything you want to throw in the mix, Roland, or?
Well,
that's something too, I think.
It's first off, it's just a pleasure for us to be able to meet with you. You know, I've been involved with this project, oh my God, since 1989. And so to follow up on Bob, you know, it's a long time waiting for 100 different reasons. And we have 4 more years before the line does open. Can you take a moment to talk about, and Charlie Scott of Metro, of course, is on this meeting, but if you could take a moment to talk about how what you're doing is going to intersect Metro, because there's so much confusion out there. And this is a question as much for Charlie Scott of Metro as for you, but a lot of people think the Purple Line is going to be the 7th Metro Rail line. And clearly, one of the questions that comes to mind is, will all of the Metro Rail maps and stations and cars have on there the purple line? But at the same time, there'll be some indication that the purple line, we're showing it to you because it does intersect 4 Metro Rail stations. That's a big deal. But at the same time, there'll be an indication that this is a state of Maryland transit line. How is this going to work? Just so the public isn't really confused. And then connected to that is the question which comes up all the time, always has, and will certainly accelerate the closer we get to the opening. And that is, can you take a moment to talk about how it's going to work also with fares? Like if a person is on the purple line, do they transfer to a Metro Rail line seamlessly without paying another fare? I mean, what has your project and Metro done in terms of those two big questions about the connections and how fares will work?
Well, I will take the first stab at it, but Charlie, definitely chime in right after me here. So in terms of the connectivity, we do have the 4 stations that are, I guess I don't know, should I call them adjacent to metro stations? I mean, clearly they've been designed with the best possible connectivity to a metro station. It's not like we're having overlapping tracks down underground or anything like that, right? So our stations are mostly at grade or above grade, and then you'd be able to transfer very nearby and very, safely and seamlessly to the metro. So the map question I have been getting, I don't know that answer, Charlie, in terms of what may be shown on new maps in the future.
From what I understand, I mean, that's a future decision, but by the Metro Board, I think there is an interest in showing the connectivity, because I think riders will appreciate seeing exactly where it is. Anecdotally, we've also looked at how can we better show high frequency bus routes to let people know other means of traveling on transit throughout the region, whether it be Metro Bus or other jurisdictions, high frequency bus routes. So I think we will do something for sure to try to make it clear to the riders of all the different ways to get around.
Then on the fares, the purple line system will be compatible with the DC Metro fare card. So you're tapping the same card, but it will be, from what I understand, a separate fare structure. But that again is very much to be determined. And the concessionaire, kind of my role in partnership with the state is really driving that and in charge of that discussion, and we're sort of supporting and advising them. So I don't know, Charlie, if that, I doubt that's been advanced too far, but
so right, and actually, Gus, you stole my question. So that was the last I heard was that MTA has moved away from Smart Trip compatibility for their system in Baltimore, and the thought was that Purple Line would follow MTA's fare payment system. The second thought being that by the time it opens, everyone will be tapping their iPhones or their Android phones and using that type of technology. And the hope, aspiration is that by being all digital, that we can have some integration down the line, but I don't think that's been worked out. So I guess, Doran, I would only suggest that those things take years. So if we're 4 years away from opening, that should probably be a elevated discussion, just because those things aren't easy. And then I would say from the rider perspective, I think there will be some sort of expectation of some levels of discount. We offer discounts between Ride On and Metro Rail, Metro Bus, Ride On, Metro Rail, so I think the public will expect some level of discount. I know that that's really an MTA decision in terms of fare policy, and that's not really on the concessionaire, but something that probably needs to be, especially with the new administration coming in, something that they will want to take a look at sooner rather than later.
Yeah, this is something that we feel really strongly about. I mean, the concessionaire, our sole purpose in life is to provide this service to the community, and for it to be as seamless and helpful as possible. So when it is, as you said, an MTA decision on sort of the fare collection and the technology, but certainly we advocate and advise for the most integration possible with Metro and the most seamless, payment and ridership experiences as we can reasonably provide. So that's where we'll be pushing. And as Charlie says, we're maybe already behind a little bit on that. So we do need to firm that up in the near future.
I think it's so important. And it's to the benefit of both Metro and the Purple Line. If the public views it as a seamless, easy to use system, and an enormous number of the public has Metro fare cards in their wallets. I mean, it's hard to find someone who doesn't have a Metro. And I would hope, because in one sense, we're only 4 years away from opening. And if these discussions don't begin now, if there's confusion at the opening about, well, how do I pay for the ride that I want to take? You mean I can't use my Metro fare card that I have in my wallet? It's not going to be to the benefit of either system. And I understand how things can be at the MTA and at Maryland DOT. And I understand that the Purple Line is under a different financing system. Obviously, it's a Maryland project. It's not an interstate regional project. But I would hope that if these conversations could begin now, because it's going to take a while for people to get comfortable in the government with how this is going to be paid for by the customer. And, if we're going to have to rely on the MTA fare system, that will be foreign to the folks in Montgomery and Prince George's, and candidly to folks in DC who are using the red line or the orange line. And then they switch to the purple line because they're going to a job in Bethesda or Silver Spring, or they're going to the University of Maryland. I guess I've been around long enough with these kinds of discussions to know that each government is very protective of its own system. But if these discussions don't begin now, and if we don't have a resolution in the next couple of years, to the extent that people find it difficult or cumbersome to use, that's not to the benefit of either system.
I'll echo Gus's concern, but also this is to Charlie as much as to Doran. I mean, you already see this within our local jurisdictions for parking revenue, for example, that we already have apps for that. There's something on our phones. Now, the challenge has been largely the fact that these different apps, at one point we had 3 different apps for 3 different jurisdictions, right? It's now largely consolidated to Park Mobile. I suspect that, the same way, hopefully there is someone taking the leadership on dealing with municipalities about their fare revenues. But let's hope that somebody out there is aggregating the same thing, or whether it's through Apple Pay or something else. But certainly the logical path here is to get rid of the cards in our wallets and simply use our mobile devices, which everyone at this point of a reasonable age is carrying. There are 2 hands up. I don't know who was first. In my upper left corner is Mayor Rush. So Mayor Rush, you're going first. Sorry, Patrick.
Okay.
You right afterwards.
Actually, Patrick, you put your hand up first. So if you wish to speak,
Mayor Rush,
go ahead.
you destroyed my, it's okay.
Okay, thank you. I guess first I'd just like to make a statement because this is my first chance to meet the new team that's come in. So thank you for your coming on board and picking this project up. I'm keenly aware that Chevy Chase has a very strong reputation in regard to this project. And I just want to say a couple of things that are important for everyone to hear. This is now my 7th year on the town council. And during my entire time on the town council, the focus of the town's government has been on working collaboratively with this project, recognizing it's going to happen and looking for certain measures of mitigation, such as the raised noise wall that we have as a change order, in order to accommodate our concerns, but recognize and accept, in fact, welcome the project going forward. The lawsuit that delayed the project was issued by certain citizens who lived in the town, but was never endorsed by the town government. And so I just want to make that statement very clear, that when people throw that around and talk about it, that's what they're referring to is what a couple of citizens did, not what the town government has ever done. We very much want to see this project completed and want to have a collaborative and productive relationship. The two issues we have, one is the noise wall, which is settled. That's been built. We're very pleased to get that additional 2 feet. The other is a noise device at the portal, which we find something to be excessive, that it would go off every time a train goes through that tunnel. And we do not understand that that's necessary, and have fought very tenaciously to get that provision changed. And we thought we had an agreement. We hope we'll get one back that will not have that unnecessary noise every time the train goes into the portal. But those are really the very specific issues. They have nothing to do with the overall project. We want to see it be concluded. We want to see it be successful. The one question I really have here that I'd like to ask is that it's always very difficult. We have 36 homes that back up onto the Purple Line. And we really don't have a good sense of the actual flow of work of what's anticipated behind those homes. You know, we have the CAT meetings, you know, every 6 months, and certain things are said, but then it's not clear what happens. And there's no sense of an overall arc of what our residents can expect. And so I'd be really grateful if you guys could generate, say, okay, over the next 2 years, here roughly, no one's going to hold you to this as a binding thing, but here are the bookends of the pace of work that we can see behind happening on that stretch of the track, just so our residents have a sense of what's literally going to be happening over some time frame. Otherwise, we just get requests saying, well, what's going on? We don't see something. When's something going to happen? And we just don't have an answer. So just any kind of workflow that can allow us to communicate with our residents would be very welcome. And I'd be grateful if you could do that. The last thing I'll ask, that structure you say is going to be built over the gantry at where the elevator shaft is on Wisconsin, that I assume is temporary and going to come down, right? Because the street has to go there. So okay.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Mayor, thanks for your comments and your support. And I am aware, you know, of the issues you mentioned, and I know the team is working on them. I hear, you know, you mentioned a good point. So we do have these community advisory teams where we meet regularly with 8 different communities along the alignment, and we do try to provide that arc of construction. And admittedly, the last few years have probably not been very satisfactory.
That's not your fault.
Yeah, I know. And now, you know, and even the last few months, we've been, you know, very heavily in the planning and refining the schedule phase. So we should be at that point now, or very soon here, where we can explain to the residents, as I explained, you know, we're going to work on this side of the road, widen it, and we're going to work on that side of the road, widen it, and we're going to build the track. And similarly, for your unique, you know, each resident there, they should have an idea what's going on in their backyard, front yard, or as it may be. So I think we can improve there, and happy to have that feedback. And I know, you know, both myself and John from our team take that really seriously. So that's something that we can follow up with you on, because it's totally reasonable. And I will note, you know, we are terrified of giving people dates in public forums, because they tend to come back as a little bit differently interpreted than we often meant to communicate. But that should not stop us from communicating to the best of our knowledge. And you caveated it yourself. You said
give us bandwidth. You don't have to say specific dates, but give bandwidth so people
exactly.
Things will happen.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Before we move over to Patrick, I'll echo one comment as a developer and a suggestion for the Purple Line team as well, which is, if you looked at your 16 odd miles, much more condensed sections of this actually back up to neighbors and houses. Most of this is on commercial routes. And this isn't just from Montgomery County. We own land in Prince George's County as well. You should be doing this and accelerating virtually all work adjacent to houses. You should be able, they should not have to endure 4 years of pain. You should accelerate all work within those zones so they can enjoy some peace and quiet before the testing. It will minimize significantly the backlash that you will hear from neighbors. You'll never get rid of the people that basically challenge the way Mayor Rush said. There's always going to be naysayers, but the people you really want on your side are your neighbors. And you know, everybody on this is largely commercially owned, right? So we have our attorneys, we understand all of this. But winning the hearts of your adjacent homeowners and giving them a break would certainly be in all of your all's best interest. So to what he's suggesting, I would take that beyond just Chevy Chase, which is a fairly well-heeled but move this out all the way out to Prince George's County. And every place you're adjacent to a house, get through that section as quickly as possible, because those people will basically become advocates as opposed to enemies. It's just a suggestion. Patrick, you're up here if you're still.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity and for the update. Obviously, we've been watching the land sit fallow for a while and are really excited to see some movement and dust coming up from the work zones. Along those lines, since you have a new construction partner as part of your team, with fresh eyes, they're looking at the plans that have been laid for these tracks and have new ideas. Can you give us an idea of any areas in which plan changes have been made or are being proposed, that, you know, high level stuff, not minor things? And then if I missed it, I apologize, but where did we ultimately end up with the pedestrian tunnel at the Bethesda station? Is that is that part of plans currently, or has that been shelved as we figure out how to make that work?
Sure. I believe that's been shelved, but I'd have to follow up on that. So I'd have to take that away and I can get back to you on that.
Can I follow up on that? I do know a little bit. I don't know if the county wants to speak to it. That pedestrian tunnel, if you're talking about, is one that has to be paid for by Montgomery County. There's obviously a lot of contention about that. The county executive, Mark Elrich, is opposed to the appropriation of money for that and did not put it into the CIP budget. So right now it is not there. Some of the county council members are very keen to have it go back in. But that's going to be taken up by the next year's county council. But it's I think the cost is now up to 55 million, something like that. And meanwhile, the surface trail has been built, at least half of it, and the other half will be. And the town of Chevy Chase is involved in that, so we're quite intimately, working with them, with the county, very cooperatively on that surface trail. But I think there is a real question mark as to whether or not the underground will be built because of how expensive it is. But in any event, that'll be determined by Montgomery County. It's their cost and their project. But if I could just, while I have the mic, the one last thing I want to say is, by the way, thank you very much for getting the Sleaford underpass done. It's great. The people at Edgevale really appreciate it. We in the town want our kids to use that, but we first have to get a safe way across East-West Highway and get a better signalization at a crosswalk, which the SHA is not very supportive of. So we have a lot of work to do on our side to try to, in the state side, to get that. But we hope that our kids will be able to use that underpass to get to BCC High School. So thank you for getting that done.
Yeah, and credit to our partners at the state of Maryland who advanced that work in advance of our contractors. And, it is a team effort. And I think that is one example of where the community said, this is so important. And we did have the means at the time and the ability to accelerate that work. And so I think that is an example of bringing forward work that wasn't intended to be done kind of in response to the community. But I think I wanted to go back because there was a first question, Patrick, but now I had the answer and now I'm blanking on what the first part of your question
was. About
design changes.
Plan changes.
Sorry, thanks. Yeah, so as this design, we ran a procurement for a new contractor together with the state of Maryland throughout 2021. And we really didn't anticipate many design changes. And I like to describe it as, I've been building transportation infrastructure my whole career. And a lot of times you have sort of the technical provisions or the state agency's rules, right? And so we're encouraged as the private sector to bring innovation and do things efficiently and the best solution for the public and think with operations in mind. So we've got this box that we can work in. And we can design anything as long as we don't bump up against any, potential requirement. And then when you add in sort of Montgomery County and DC Metro and the Maryland Department of the Environment, I describe it now as this project really is threading a needle, instead of this big box, we're sort of threading a needle between all the agencies, communities, right away. So there are no significant design changes. I believe this organization has brought forth a couple unique construction means and methods at some of these challenging locations. And we mentioned Bethesda. At Silver Springs, where I kind of showed a picture, they've got a really unique way that I believe they're going to be able to access over CSX and WMATA rail in a different way. So we're not lifting loads over a track that would have to be then out. So again, that benefits the traveling public with fewer metro closures and less coordination between the agencies. But in terms of the design of the project, where is the track going? What do the trains look like? That's all very much consistent with what it has been.
Okay.
Hi, this is Christina. I just also wanted to respond for Montgomery County, Patrick, with your question. Mayor Rush kind of stole my thunder there. Thank you, Mayor.
My apologies. I didn't mean to.
No worries, no worries. No, but I just wanted to at least let you know that yes, the pedestrian access underneath the for the Capitol Crescent Trail is a Montgomery County project, as Mayor Rush noted, and we still are moving forward with it, at least in our office with the Department of Transportation. And as soon as funding is available, we will put that to construction.
And if I could put in a plug for you, Christina, and Montgomery County, this project is all about access, and we spend so much time thinking about pedestrians in terms of safety and access. And the Purple Line can be a bit limited at what we can do as a project because we have our federal limits as to what land we can disturb, and we have our permits. And so a sidewalk to a station, for instance, may be a fantastic idea, but we just don't have the authority to construct it. And that's where Montgomery County has just done such a great job in planning on how to improve access around these stations. And Christina and Maricela and others have just been great partners to the project because there is really a joined up approach here to people accessing the facilities that we're working to build.
That's correct. And in Montgomery, thank you, Doran, because in Montgomery, we have the bicycle and pedestrian priority areas that we're looking at just to try and funnel the public where they need to access the Purple Line or access the trail.
Christine, if I could just follow up, I want to thank, by the way, the surface trail that you guys have built is really terrific. And that is really an excellent bit of work going through Bethesda, right through the middle. I think it's wide, it's very safe, it'll be used a lot. But the other thing I forgot to mention, there will still be if I recall this correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, Christina, but there will be a pedestrian walkway adjacent to the tracks that goes from Pearl Street to the station, correct? That's not the bike trail, but just a separate walking path for pedestrians that will be directly adjacent to the tracks. That's still part of the plan?
I believe it is, yes. Okay, I'm still getting myself oriented on that aspect of it there, but I believe there is.
I'd like to ask another question, and I'm glad that Christina is on this call because I think it's more in her bailiwick than Doran's bailiwick, but we're all talking about how to best coordinate with the various agencies and the project developer, state and county, so that on the day this opens in 4 years, it's easy for people to get onto, pay for, that it doesn't become a complicated, complex thing that discourages riders. It's something that has concerned me for a very long time, to be candid. Speaking of the walkways and the pedestrian ways, I happen to live near, in Silver Spring, the Woodside 16th Street station, which is also a staging ground for those of you who haven't been aware of it. But if you drive down 16th Street in Silver Spring, you see this enormous staging ground for Doran's project that is used to help build this project in that area of the project line in the Silver Spring, Bethesda, Chevy Chase area as you move eastward towards Prince George's County. And the question is often asked of me just because folks know that I live nearby and I have some with the project going ways, they often ask, well, how can we walk down 16th Street to get to the new Woodside 16th Street station if there's no sidewalk on one side of 16th Street, which at this time, there is no sidewalk. And then I have to say, well, remember 16th Street is a state highway. So the state has a big say about sidewalks on their state highways. And yes, it's done by working with the local county jurisdictions everywhere. But people have increasingly, as they read that, well, it's going to open in 4 years, people have asked at community meetings in that area of Silver Spring, how do we walk down from the neighborhood down 16th Street when there's a sidewalk on one side, but no sidewalk on the other side, given how wide, obviously, 16th Street is? I mean, as Christina knows, that is a very wide boulevard, 6 lanes with a big median. So in light of what the mayor has talked about a bit about, how to make it easier for people to be able to walk to our Purple Line stations, I was just wondering, Christina, has the county DOT had conversations with Maryland State Highway Administration just about that issue of how can people walk down 16th Street to get to the coming Woodside station?
I'm sure those conversations have occurred. I'm not as up to speed on those, and I do apologize, but I will find out for you. And I do promise to get back to you to let you know where that stands.
It would be really helpful because at these big community meetings that I sometimes am involved in, someone will invariably stand up and ask that question. One side of 16th Street has a sidewalk, but the other side does not. And people want to be able to encourage their kids, and by kids, I mean, a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old child who doesn't have a driver's license. And hopefully these projects will discourage everyone wanting a driver's license with the minute they turn 16. But they want to be able to feel like they can say to their 14-year-old child, yeah, just walk down to the Purple Line station and you can get around, So it's just one of those questions that increasingly comes up, and I do understand how complicated the answer will be. And then I have a question for Doran, if I might. Speaking of the Woodside 16th Street station, that used to be a shopping center. And then, of course, it was taken over to be the staging ground for construction and eventually the construction of that new Woodside station. Is that entire property, which is quite expansive, going to be devoted to the Purple Line Woodside station? Or is there going to be possibly a smaller shopping center rebuilt there next to the future station? That question comes up too sometimes, and I'm just curious if that's something you might know about.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get back to you on that one, Gus, for sure. I don't know the answer.
Okay.
I do know, again, I hate to sound like such a plug but Montgomery County does such a good job in their evaluation. They've actually looked at, in the pedestrian evaluation, at each station, they've rated with a percentage score, what is the access today? What are the recommended improvements, and what would that new score be? And so Woodside Station connectivity has one of the lowest ratings currently, as you've kind of described. And there are recommendations in the report on how to improve it, and then what it would kind of raise the score. So I'm sure Christina and the city and the county can get back on where they are with those recommendations, but it's clearly an area they noted, just consistent with your observations. So,
and I would hope, candidly, though I've learned through experience, not to have to moderate my hopes that given that the Purple Line is a state project and the state wants it to succeed, the state wants it to be financially viable as you do with your concern. Fortunately, because it's a state transit station, hopefully SHA and MTA are able to talk to each other about this and come up with a solution so that on the day it opens in 4 years, because there's one thing I know about sidewalks. To get a sidewalk project into the CIP takes an inordinate long time. And again, if the county and state aren't able to start talking about this very soon, there may be no decent pedestrian access to this new station when it does open in 4 years. That's all.
Definitely, and I know we spend time walking the site with SHA and our county partners and localities in both counties. So I have been on walks with SHA because, as someone mentioned, a pedestrian signal earlier. A lot of cases that's an SHA. I'm going to call it issue, but jurisdiction is maybe a better word. And so we like to bring them to our project, show them firsthand, what we're dealing with, and try to find a solution that works for the county, the Purple Line, and the SHA. Definitely.
Are you finding good cooperation now with the new administration at the University of Maryland College Park campus for your 3 stations there? Are things much better than they were like 10 years ago, where University of Maryland College Park leadership was not so supportive, to be candid, of the project? And of course, that changed with the new leadership at the University of Maryland. But I just wanted to ask you if you're finding good cooperation on your 3 stations there at the campus.
We are, and I've been involved with the project for the last 3 or 4 years, and so we've always had. I'm not aware of the more distant past, but we've always had very good cooperation, communication. We meet with them extremely regularly, like all the stakeholders and jurisdictions. But
right.
Yeah, we're really looking forward. The new contractor has not really started to get heavily mobilized there, but we are coming up on downtimes for Christmas, and then really looking to the summer months to knock out a lot of that work.
That's great. That's very good to hear. Thank you.
Can I make one other point? I want to mention about the Sleaford underpass. I saw there's a very minor thing, but an easy thing I think you guys could address. There's a staircase on, but what occurred to me, maybe you're planning this anyway, but we used to live in Europe. We saw this all the time. There would be a little kind of gutter that would be put up the side so that people who wanted to walk their bikes could put the wheels of the bike on that gutter and walk up the staircase and get their bike easily up to the path. It would just offer a very low cost and effective way to permit connectivity of people on their bicycles from the Sleaford underpass area up onto the Capitol Crescent Trail.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Yeah. All right. No, thank you. Yeah, I am aware of that staircase actually. So yeah, I knew exactly where you were at when you were.
Okay. No, I wasn't complaining about the staircase. I'm just suggesting something can be added to it that would make it usable by those who have bicycles and want to get up to the trail.
Perfect.
Without having to, put their bicycles on their shoulders.
Yeah, we don't all have carbon fiber.
Right. Right.
Doran, is it the plan in 4 years that when the Purple Line opens, that the Capitol Crescent Trail along the Purple Line corridor is the thinking that they'll both open at about the same time? Is there a difference in time frame, if you know?
Yeah, so this has been an area of heavy focus for us, and we do receive a lot of feedback on the Capitol Crescent Trail. Currently, the base plan is that it will be open concurrently with the light rail system. As we get closer and we know exactly what our construction needs for access are, again, because it's so close to the line, and because we will be testing, and safety is just paramount to everything, as well as construction access, we'll be continually evaluating opportunities to open that trail early. We've heard that feedback loud and clear. You know, I mentioned carbon fiber. Like I'm a huge cyclist myself, you know, and I know that people use these trails for more than just cycling, but just their daily lives. It's a very important part of why they live there and why they love it there. And so it's not ideal that the trail's been closed this long, and we're receptive to that, and trying to do our best to manage both, you know, finishing this massive project, but also trying to open the rail sooner. So right now it's not envisioned to open before, but as we get closer, we'll be continually scrutinizing, asking ourselves, you know, can we safely open that trail sooner?
Thank you. Are there other comments or questions?
Andy Bridge has got his hand up as well.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to help Gus out with a little answer. The biggest controversies at the University of Maryland were, one, moving the M. That was a huge, huge deal. And I can't tell you how many meetings I was in that people were just irate that they were going to move the M. It's calmed down. The other thing is there's been so much construction at the University of Maryland over the last 3 and 4 years that, you know, that was a big issue with past administration. But Dr. Pines is 100% behind this project. And so I think Doran has described it quite well. There's more positive for this to the University of Maryland now than there was 5-6 years ago. So just thought I'd bring that up.
I have to sign off, everybody. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other final thoughts, questions, comments? We've got 10 minutes. We don't have to use them. As Gus said, we do like to sort of start to wind down. So if there isn't anything else, we can start to sort of prepare our sign off here. Going once, going twice. All right, Doran, you're off the hook a little early today.
All right.
So thank you for joining us. It's very much appreciated, as you know, healthy and spirited discussion with, you know, sort of largely the commercial sector, although we did have the mayor involved with us. But I think we're all generally supportive, right? I mean, the biggest challenge, we're just trying to make sure that the frictions that are there get removed so that, you know, citizens stop complaining, that businesses start getting what they want, that basically that we see, you know, something not dissimilar to Silver Line, right? That everybody, it opens, everybody breathes a collective sigh of relief, and we can start to move forward. You know, I think many people look forward to be able to going from, you know, parts of Silver Spring over to Bethesda without ever having to get on the red line. No offense, Charlie, but the simple fact is a lot of us would just like to make that cut across our own county pretty quickly, and we can't do that today. So that is a huge one. The Capitol Crescent Trail, it's good that came up at the end, but, you know, challenges most people on this call actually remember when they were actually was a freight line. And, you know, when it finally got converted into a bike trail and walking trail, what have you, the second it got taken away, that's of course when people were all up in arms. Giving it back as quickly as possible, giving citizens the opportunity to feel like things are normalizing will help. And then it just becomes a matter of finishing the work and over. So anyway. My thoughts, Gus, you and Brian, anything you want to say and close out? Thank you again, Doran, and thanks everybody for joining.
Just to say that this has been an outstanding presentation. It's great, Doran, that you're able to join us today. Everyone is so looking forward to 4 years from now, not just to be at the ribbon cutting of the project, which occurred a few years ago, but at the opening of the project. And speaking personally, someone who's been involved in this from the 80s, when we were paying $10 million to buy that right-of-way from the rail company for the transit project. The hiker biker trail came later, much later, and it was part of the deal. But it didn't stop the opposition, to be candid. Even though a hiker biker trail was added to the project back in the late 80s, early 90s, even though we did that, we spent a fortune on that entire process, it didn't stop the opposition, which is why we're so many years behind. But now we can all see the light at the end of the tunnel, if I can use that term, for an actual transportation project that has a few tunnels in it. But now that we can see that light 4 years from now, it's just great, Doran, that you and your team have been working, diligently and so closely with everyone involved to try to get this opening. And I think it was a great decision that was made a couple of years ago, or maybe it was a year ago, that the project will now open at once, the entire 16-mile route, not in phases. You alluded to that at the beginning of your remarks, that decision got changed. And I think it was a great decision that you all made, that on a certain day in 2026, the entire line will open end to end. So you have always had the support of the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. We have been behind this project from the get-go. And if you and your team needs any help with any political people or governmental people, if we can be useful to you, just pass the word along. We don't mind bending an arm or two where necessary.
Yeah. Well,
thank.
I just have to finish where I started, which is thanks to all of you. You people have taken your time out to hear about it, ask questions, and we are here to serve the community. And so it'd be a lot easier to build a light rail train through a cornfield somewhere with no utilities and no residents and no businesses, but it wouldn't help anybody. So we're here for the challenge. We need the feedback, because this is the community we're here to serve and be a part of through construction as a good partner, and then for the next 30 years. So thank you all for your time, and don't hesitate to keep reaching out and challenging us to do the best we can for the community.
Thank you. We're going to turn this over to Brian now to end it.
Yeah, Doran, Gus stole some of the comments that I wanted to make. I mean, the chamber pledges we now and in the future our support for Purple Line Transit Partners and what you're undertaking. A very important project for the Metro Maryland region, obviously, and really appreciate your time today. I was very anxious to have this meeting today and hear from you, and you did not disappoint. So with that, thank you on behalf of the Infrastructure and Land Use Committee at the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for everyone for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your morning. And we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully at the Congressman-elect Glenn Ivey Legislative Affairs Committee meeting. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Brian.